In the dimly lit corridor, two figures, a man and a woman, were moving through. As they walked, they heard some noises ahead and cautiously went to investigate. Not far away, there was a room with a person sitting inside, wearing a prisoner's uniform and a hood. It was likely that they had already turned into a zombie. Addie excitedly raised her spiked club, ready to give him a final send-off, only to find out it was just a lifeless body. These two individuals were none other than Mac and Addie, who had become separated from Team X. They didn't know where this place was. In the morning, when they contacted Citizen Z at the Arctic station, he had simply instructed them to come here. Soon, they entered another room, and as soon as they opened the door, 4 or 5 zombies were attracted to the noise. Addie casually approached. She had developed some mental issues during this period and seemed a bit twisted. She now thoroughly enjoyed the process of killing. Suddenly, there was another sound in the corridor, reminiscent of zombies hitting pipes, and it was quite loud. Mac pulled out his gun and took the lead to investigate. However, strangely, as they approached, the sound disappeared. Surprisingly, the unexpected joy was the reunion with Roberta and the others, whom they had been desperately searching for. Both sides embraced each other, never expecting to see each other again, let alone in this place. After adjusting their emotions, they realized it wasn't the time for reminiscing. They were starving and needed to find the man called Chester. It was only then that Mac noticed Cassandra's injured leg. Doc explained that Cassandra had accidentally been scratched by barbed wire yesterday and had an infection. They just hoped it wasn't tetanus. Although everyone was hungry, the fact that Team X was complete again lifted their spirits. They proceeded cautiously along the corridor, following the route described by Citizen Z. Chester should be in one of these rooms. Roberta knocked on the door, but there was no response. She opened it and walked in. Chester was indeed inside, but he was already dead, a bullet hole glaring on his forehead. It was unclear what he had been through. Addie picked up her spiked club and struck it once, twice, thrice. She had been acting strangely lately, frequently envisioning scenes of her family turning into zombies. After releasing her pent-up emotions, Addie finally noticed everyone looking at her with strange expressions. They were all speculating whether Addie had been through some traumatic experience during the time they were separated. At this moment, a familiar voice came from behind them, continuously calling for Chester. As they walked into the room, Citizen Z, who had been calling for Chester, was taken aback. Is this woman leading the group Roberta? He wondered. Soon after, Citizen Z saw Addie, whom he had longed to see, and quickly greeted her. In Mac's mind, he cursed silently. After exchanging a few sarcastic remarks, Citizen Z remembered the main purpose of the communication. He solemnly said, "I have good news here. The California laboratory is back online and has contacted me. Your efforts for this country will not be in vain. I sincerely thank you." However, the news didn't move them. What they urgently needed now was not praise but information on where to find food. Citizen Z smiled awkwardly and then used the satellite to quickly find the room where the food was stored. After obtaining food and gasoline, Team X continued their journey along the road. The existence of the California laboratory further strengthened their belief in saving the world. However, escorting Murphy was undeniably a painful task because of his lack of manners. Murphy was currently enjoying a can of sardines without a care for his companions in the car. As they continued down the road, they saw a severed zombie torso, obviously that of a child. It was truly heart-wrenching. After a while, they had already left Salt Lake City 250 miles behind. At this moment, 10K tapped the roof of the car to alert everyone to a situation ahead. They all looked, and once again, they saw a child turned into a zombie, carrying a backpack, walking towards them. Addie asked Roberta to pull over. She wanted to give this child a merciful end. However, as she raised her spiked club to strike, memories of her younger brother turning into a zombie flooded her mind. Addie stood frozen in place. Roberta couldn't bear to see Addie like this and tried to comfort her. She wasn't angry. After all, Addie was her friend. They continued driving, but after a few dozen miles, another child appeared in front of them. This time, however, it was not a zombie but a living person. This road was getting weirder and weirder. Roberta got out and, after ensuring there were no ambushes around, put away her weapon.
A little thirsty is all.
Regardless of the situation, basic kindness should prevail when dealing with children. After finishing the water, Sam politely thanked Roberta. He mentioned that he had grown up and wanted to go to Salt Lake City to see his father, and his mother had encouraged him to venture out. Roberta was surprised, unsure of how long Sam had been on the road. However, the idea of traveling 300 miles to Salt Lake City, now occupied by zombies, seemed implausible. The situation struck her as strange, but Roberta didn't think much of it. She just assumed that Sam's father was dead and his mother had made up a lie that his father was in Salt Lake City. Recalling the two children who had turned into zombies earlier, she felt compelled to intervene. Otherwise, the boy might not survive 3 days. Roberta kindly lied, telling Sam that they would help him find his family, and they would drive him to Salt Lake City. Sam gladly agreed, finding walking difficult, and he genuinely wanted to assist these kind strangers. After driving another 60 miles, Sam directed them into a valley. Outside, signs warned against approaching, but there were no guards or patrols in sight. They stopped the car, and Roberta instructed Mac to scout the area. As Mac approached the gate, armed individuals suddenly appeared on both sides of the valley. Strangely, they were all women. Mac puts his gun away and tries to make it clear that he doesn't mean any harm, but the men don't take it that way and just shoot and threaten. Roberta raised her hands and walked out, loudly explaining, "We came here with no ill intentions, we just want to return the lost child to you." After Roberta spoke, the women's expressions softened slightly, the iron gate creaked open, and 4 women emerged, with Helen, the leader, looking stern. Sam quickly explained that these were good people just looking for some food. Initially, Roberta thought that these people would be happy and grateful as they had returned the child. However, despite Helen expressing thanks verbally, her demeanor always seemed somewhat aloof. It wasn't until she noticed Cassandra's injured leg that her demeanor changed. Helen assertively declared that she would help treat Cassandra, but only women and children were allowed inside. The men had to stay outside. This peculiar rule left them all in a state of confusion. Nevertheless, Roberta nodded in agreement, as Cassandra's leg injury couldn't be delayed any longer. Once healed, they would leave. Thus, the men had no choice but to wait outside. However, a fortunate event occurred. One of the women took an interest in one of them. 5 minutes later, they were led into the community, and the sight inside astonished them. For years after the end of the world, there was still a place like this. Before they even got out of the car, a resident offered to take Cassandra to get her wounds treated. The environment here not only appeared beautiful but also showcased a remarkable harmony in interpersonal relationships.
Want to see my carrots?
While Addie marveled at the scene, Roberta couldn't help but smile. After traversing the entire United States, exhausted and worn, arriving here brought an immediate sense of relaxation to their bodies and minds. Helen warmly guided Roberta around the community, familiarizing her with the structures. She even showcased the cultivation of vegetables, fruits, livestock, and poultry, indicating that the community was entirely self-sufficient. There's a lot of milk, butter, and other ingredients that you can't find anywhere else. Moreover, they had a pharmacist who could produce medicines like penicillin and antibiotics. Roberta found it all incredibly unbelievable. Helen even arranged a hot bath for her. Meanwhile, Addie was engrossed in playing with a little girl. In recent times, Addie had been mentally unstable, weary of zombies and the post-apocalyptic world. However, upon arriving here, she completely relaxed. Everything seemed so beautiful without zombies and conflicts. At first, Roberta shared this sentiment, but she soon sensed something amiss. There were only women and children here, not a single man. Helen didn't reveal much, only mentioning that these women were unfortunate souls who found happiness here. Despite Helen's reassurances, the more she spoke, the more suspicious Roberta became. Finding an excuse, she left the dining table, claiming to check on Cassandra. In the medical room, she discovered that Cassandra's wound had been properly treated. Seeing the doctor leaving, Cassandra immediately displayed a grave expression, realizing that something was off. Roberta seemed to understand what was happening. It was horrifying. No wonder they had witnessed several boys turning into zombies on their way here. It turned out that this place was an all-female community. Boys, upon reaching the age of 13, were encouraged to journey to Salt Lake City to find their fathers. Most of them would die on the way, and the mothers here seemed to be indoctrinated into accepting this practice. Roberta was shocked to find that, despite the apparent happiness in the community, something was disturbingly abnormal. She decided that when Cassandra showed some signs of improvement, they would leave, but what they never realized was that Helen, in the guise of a big sister, had approached Addie to listen to her past. Addie had memories she preferred not to recall, such as witnessing her family turn into zombies and the experiences with cannibals. It was all a shadow she couldn't shake. Helen took the opportunity to immediately put some of her thoughts into Addie's head, as if she was feeling the same way. Helen even says that the source of violence is men. She then invited Addie to stay, emphasizing that without men, nothing bad would happen. Addie, who had been depressed recently, found a sense of identity and belonging when she heard Helen's words.
Both of them.
I have to say Helen is definitely an expert in psychology. Meanwhile, outside, Doc and the others were setting up camp. At this time, a woman dressed in cool clothes came out with 2 portions of food in her hand. Doc was instantly captivated. Serena's arrival wasn't merely about delivering food. She was in search of someone. Eagerly, Serena walked over, a smile forming on 10K's lips. But Serena didn't even glance at him. Murphy understood without a word. And so, they both entered the small tent, indulging in blueberry pie. Serena seems to know how to flirt as she tries to unbutton Murphy's shirt, but Murphy grabs her hand. His body bore the marks of zombie bites, and he didn't want Serena to see. Undeterred, Serena continued to undress Murphy, still enjoying the moment. Sure enough, when Serena saw the bite marks, she was startled. Unexpectedly, instead of fear, she became incredibly excited. Let's skip the rest of the plot. In the neighborhood, Helen and Addie talk more and more, and at one point they hug each other and choke on their tears. Suddenly, there was the sound of a car, and it turned out that a newcomer had joined in. As it turns out, the people who went out met a couple where the wife was being severely abused by her husband, so they rescued her. Helen again showed her compassionate look. This kind of person is the best brainwashing. Subsequently, the abusive husband was brought up, and all the women were furious. Doc also touched the hill at some point and he secretly saw the scene of the execution of the man.